Rupert Murdoch just became kind of uncomfortable with how both how big Tucker had gotten, and then in this particular instance, a woman he was engaged to at the time was a huge Tucker Carlson fan, and she actually thought he was a messenger from God.
What happened with Tucker? Why was he fired? Did you get a sense from the people you talked to of what it was that motivated Fox to get rid of him?
I mean, like Tucker has his theory that he was fired as part of the Dominion settlement.
Yeah.
That Dominion wanted 1 billion from Rupert Murdoch, and Rupert Murdoch wasn't going to give him 1 billion, so he gave him 787 million in Tucker's scalp. And
Hmm.
and it's all wasn't written down. It was a wink, wink, nod, nod thing, so no one will ever know. But that's Tucker's theory. There were theories that there were things that he texted, calling like some Fox employees like pretty nasty language that came up in the Dominion discovery, and there was something there. There's a, I mean, this theory actually I think maybe is the one that I subscribe to, is that Rupert Murdoch just became kind of uncomfortable with how both how big Tucker had gotten, and then in this particular instance, a woman he was engaged to at the time was a huge Tucker Carlson fan, and she actually thought he was a messenger from God. And Rupert Murdoch had Tucker out to his villa in
Oh
California
dear.
for lunch, and the fiance was there, and she, acted towards Tucker as if she thought you were a messenger from God. And it just kind
Yeah.
of freaked Murdoch out. And like the next day, he actually called off the engagement. And then a few weeks later, he canceled Tucker's show.
I need to
Again, like
bring
none of
Tucker
those.
in front of some of my previous girlfriends so they could be like an X-ray of all their faults. If they would say Tucker is a messenger from God, I'd be like, I'm gonna save myself 6 months here.
Yeah, you can back out right then. It's good.
But
No, it's
about that though, you do point out something, which again, look, I want to be fair to a guy who I think's gone around the bend, but on Fox, you point out that when, and I'm now forgetting her name, this crank who is on kind of
Sidney
on
Powell.
Sidney Powell,
Yeah,
who he challenges and says,
yeah,
"Come on the show if you have evidence of election fraud." Bring it. And she says, stop contacting me. But he stepped up in that. Like, that's an old Tucker thing. If you're going to be, in the salt mines of conspiracy theory, come out with a product and tell me what it is. And
yeah.
so there's like these moments, these flashes of that old Tucker.
Well, yeah, I mean, in the period after the 2020 election, I mean, he obviously got roped into the Dominion suit, but on his show was like an island of responsibility on that network. Like
Yeah.
he didn't have Giuliani on to talk about this stuff. He didn't have Sidney Powell on. He actually like debunked her on air, where all these other shows on Fox are, amplifying this stuff. Like I mean, you don't want to give him too much credit, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But in that environment, he actually behaved like very responsibly. I mean,
Yeah.
again, we're defining responsibility down here,
Yeah.
but on Fox, like it stood out. It was different. It
Yeah.
really was.
I think those text messages that come out between him and various people at Fox, I think those complicate everything so much in the sense that you have someone with feelings that align with my own about the sort of malign influence of Trump on American politics, on the conservative movement, whatever you want to say. And it's like, yeah, that's what most of my friends would say to me. And then, you blink and he's doing a series called Patriot Purge, which ends up being a purge of people from Fox, Jonah Goldberg, who walks away, Steve
Yeah,
Hayes,
Steve
who
Hayes.
walks
Yeah.
away, who are like, I can't be associated with this. But those text messages, I mean, again, it's late days in this evolution of him where he seems like a normal voice. That's the confusing part.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I do think Leo's like when those text messages came out. I mean, obviously, some of the stuff he said, Trump's a demonic force. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, that's pretty severe. But
Yeah.
like at the same time, if you watched his show that year when he was, criticizing Trump, on COVID, criticizing him on the BLM protests, and then also look, like Tucker, like he talks a lot to people off air. And I think like certainly talks a lot to like political journalists in Washington. And I think, Ben Smith once wrote like a really good column about that. And I think like Tucker's sort of views on Trump were not not unknown by people in Washington. So when those text messages came out, like I don't think I think in some ways like the Hannity and the Ingram stuff was like more shocking because you never saw any evidence on air and you never heard anything about what they were saying off air that suggested there was any daylight between them and Trump, and that made them look like even bigger hypocrites.
Mhm.
Whereas Tucker, I mean, there was obviously some hypocrisy there, but I felt like it wasn't as great as maybe some of his colleagues because he was, if you watched his show carefully, at least you could sort of see some of that there, in a more sober and kind of polite form.
The book is hated by all the right people. Tucker Carlson and the Unraveling of the Conservative Mind. Normally, I'd hold up a copy of the book. I got an ebook. I paid for it. I
Oh
didn't
man,
even
oh
ask them.
really?
I
Oh,
didn't
well,
even ask them.
we'll
Maybe they can
send you
send
one.
me a hardcover
We will
and I'll
send you
put
a
it over my
hardcover.
shoulder. Because
I
if
think I
you
got
don't
one. They told me to do that. So
look
there
at
it
that,
is.
it's right up there.
Yeah,
That's
with
you see it
Tucker's
on the right.
nicotine brand right
Yeah,
below
it's
it.
being
Yeah.
held up by Tucker's nicotine
Ow.
patch
Yeah.
brand, or the dip or whatever it is.